Hello, Tim from Fair Play Now. And anyone sort of come in on and seen me with these videos and what I say in these videos might be sort of thinking, Tim, what's the problem? Don't you know there's a pandemic on? You should really be much more on board with the narrative and what the media are saying and what the government's telling us. You know, you're just such a rebel. And what on earth's wrong with you? You're just such a conspiracy theorist. Well, maybe I'd be a little bit more on board, just a little bit more on board, if it wasn't for these 15 fishy things. And I could come out with a lot more, and if you've got any more, please leave your ones in the comment section below. But let's just go through my 15 fishy things. So pardon me, because I'm going to be looking down a lot here. Fishy thing number one. In October 2019, there was something called Event 201 that happened, where they discussed the effects and responses to a global coronavirus type pandemic. Key players included the World Economic Forum, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many others. And point 7 also discussed how to combat disinformation online by flooding platforms with large amounts of factual news. Just 3 months before the pandemic began, October 2019. Coincidence? Or does that sound a little bit fishy? Point number 2. Johnson, who was initially against lockdowns, was persuaded by Ferguson, who has a long history of providing exaggerated and overly estimated deaths based on flawed modelling techniques. So why did the government listen to him when he's got such a poor track record and not others who are far more qualified and informed and who have a better track record? Who knows? Number 3, the government continues to listen to just a small number of medical advisors with proven conflicts of interest, such as large numbers of shares in big pharma companies. And also some of them have even got links to environmentalists and even the Communist Party. And these are members of SAGE that I'm talking about. And there are actually more people on SAGE who are applied psychologists at the moment than virologists and epidemiologists. So does that mean they are sort of trying to sort of mess with our heads? Who knows? It's all a little bit fishy, that. And just to add to that, point 3, they don't seem to be listening to credible medical experts with no proven history, hidden agendas, and who have just got a deep concern about what's going on. I'm talking about people like Hennigan, Yeadon, and many, many others like that, all the great Barrington Declaration people. Fishy thing number 4. So many politicians, advisors, celebs not practicing what they preach and disobeying their own rules. Ferguson, Cummings, I think it's the Welsh Health Minister and the Scottish Health Minister and many, many others just flouting the rules after telling us how important it is for us to obey them. It's almost like they kind of know that, you know, it's not really anything worth worrying about to be obeyed. It's almost like that, isn't it? Point number 5. Many non-COVID deaths are reported as COVID deaths, seemingly to inflate the figures. And why is this necessary? And in a real pandemic, do you not think there'd be enough genuine deaths? And this is a fact. The government was forced to reduce their COVID death tally last summer by about 10%. And if they admit to 10%, you know what governments are like, that probably means it should have been closer to a 50% reduction at least. Number 6, everything went from being about deaths to cases from about June onwards, with little to no reporting on how many of these cases result in hospital admissions and deaths, and yet they were used to justify ever increasing restrictions and impositions like masks, tiers and more lockdowns. Point 7, or fishy thing number 7, increased cases resulted mainly from increased numbers of tests carried out, so stands to reason more positives will be recorded, yet no one in the mainstream seems to acknowledge this obvious link, and it's just used to scaremonger even further. So it stands to reason if you're testing more, you're going to get more cases, and yet, you know, people just seem to be sort of thinking, oh my God, this is such a big problem, this is such a big problem. Number 8, PCR tests. Highly inaccurate and not being used appropriately. Even Dominic Raab said quite a few months ago now that 93% of the tests are inaccurate, which probably means more like 99% of them are inaccurate, him being a politician. But these suspect tests are used to produce all the cases, so-called cases, which are resulting in all the panic and all the harsh measures. Number 9, censorship. The mainstream media are refusing to report on anything that conflicts with the narrative, and social media, all the usual suspects, the big social media companies, are pulling down any commentators or any posts that again go against the mainstream narrative. Why? You have to ask yourself, in a free country, why is such huge amounts of censorship like that necessary? Fishy thing number 10. Lockdowns don't seem to be working, but we need more. And if lockdowns worked, why do we need more of them? Surely it should be the other way around. If they worked, the problem would be over. So no more lockdowns. Fishy thing number 11. It's been reported that the actual COVID virus itself has never been properly isolated. So if it's not isolated, how can it be tested for? And how can it be countermeasured? And that doesn't make sense. Fishy thing number 12. Why are they so keen for us all to have the big V for a condition with a 99.7% recovery rate or survival rate? And they seem absolutely desperate to get it into absolutely everybody, even whilst the overall death rate remains so relatively low. And that seems a bit fishy. I mean, yes, if the death rate was 50% of people, I could understand it, but with that recovery rate, why? Fishy thing number 13. We're talking about these so-called busy hospitals with the NHS staff supposedly run off their feet all the time, and yet there's been these weird videos produced all around the world of sort of doctors and nurses just doing these sort of dance routines, and I've seen a couple of them and they don't look like they're just doing dancing how you and I would do after a few pints on the sort of dance floor at a nightclub or a party. Some of them look pretty well rehearsed, like they've been doing it a lot. So too much time on their hands perhaps. And why are they making these videos? Is it just to take the mickey out of us, or is it some kind of secret message they're sending out? Because a lot of them are afraid to actually speak out in case they lose their jobs. But if they can kind of send a message that they might not be so busy as what we've been led to believe, that might be the reason for that. Fishy thing number 14. Most of the over 70s, i.e. the most vulnerable people in society that we've got a lockdown for, socially distance for, wear masks for, now had the big V. So why aren't we coming out of lockdown? If they've all been, all the most vulnerable groups have now had the jab, that doesn't seem to make sense either, when the whole point of it in the first place, the lockdown, was to protect the vulnerable. And point number 15, going back to the hospitals, why are there all these videos of people wandering around with their phones, filming empty hospital corridors and empty wards? And that just seems so fishy as well. So that's 15 fishy things, and you wonder why I'm such a skeptic. And with all this stuff going on, is it any wonder? And if everything was above board and seemingly genuine, and there wasn't all these conflicting things, all these contradictions, then yeah, maybe I'd be a little bit more on board. But I know how to smell a rat when I smell one. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Tim from Fair Play Now. Thanks for watching.